Dear learners, welcome to this session, Encounter with Colonialism and Poverty. This lecture is continuation of our previous two lectures. This is part of the course MA in Gandhi and Peace Studies. I am Dr. G. Uma, working as Assistant Professor in the School of Gender and Development Studies. Welcome to this session. In this session, we will elaborately talk about the Gandhi's encounter with poverty, how his experience translated built his socio-economic thought. We should be very clear now that one of the serious and severe impacts of colonialism on India was impoverishment of large masses. All of us must be knowing that how they, specifically East India Company and colonialism, has totally spoiled our economy. When we got an independence, India has to address the issues of poverty, infrastructure development and building up of our economy, address the issues of large sections of the population and address the issues of women, marginalized and other sections of the population. The economic condition of the large sections of the population is very poor. Large percentage of our population, they did not have access to health facilities. So, India performed very poor in all socio-economic indicators when we got an independence in 1947. This happened because of the economic backbone of India was broken systematically by the British from a very beginning of their landing of Indian shore. The East India Company had come to look for business, and with the expansion of industrialization in Britain, and the company helped in extending the market for industrial output. It imported inputs required for industry and infrastructure cheaply from India. Of course, the Britishers has colonized many Asian and African countries. Not only in India, they have, due to their understanding about free market economy and capitalism, they tried to import cheap requirements for their own industry and infrastructure from India and exported finished goods at prices cheaper than the domestic prices. So, obviously, if the people get the cheaper products in the market, they try to purchase the cheaper products than the domestic products. The local producers who produced goods manually, mostly in as far as England is concerned, they produced all the goods in the industry, but the good produced in India was manually in a very small scale and could not stand with the competition. Gandhi noted that this led to rampant unemployment, and the skilled and unskilled workers in non-agriculture sectors had to leave their work and go back to agriculture and allied work. The pressure on land and agricultural activities has increased manifold. Gandhi has realized the gravity of the situation in India with respect to poverty, but he has not written about poverty as a subject in great deal. Actually, whatever he experienced, he tried to relate that experience and he tried to theorize his experience and try to write those experience. If you read the Gandhi's writings, he has not written about poverty directly as a subject in a great detail. He encountered poverty in many situations and there are descriptions about them. Interestingly, a person who was compassionate and believed in Sarvodaya and rejected the thesis of the greatest good of the greatest number did not ever talk about anti-poverty program in the way which it is discussed properly. You must be knowing that we got an independence in 1947. From first 5-year plan onwards, the government is formulating and implementing many anti-poverty programs. In the 21st century, in the current manner, the government, instead of the anti-poverty programs, is formulated and implemented through employment generating activities like Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme, and the government is implementing in rural areas. Currently, many of the policy makers, they wanted the same program for urban poor also. So like after we got an independence from first 5-year plan, now the year plan, we are implementing so many anti-poverty programs. But if you look at the Gandhi's writings and his work on poverty, he did not ever talk about anti-poverty program in a way which we are conceiving and we are implementing in a current scenario. This does not mean that he failed to recognize as it a serious problem. In fact, he realized that the poverty is a very serious problem and it needs to be eradicated. As far as Gandhi is concerned, poverty for Gandhi was a curse and all efforts had to be directed towards removing it. For Gandhi, poverty was a structural issue, so he wants to address the structural issue to address the poverty. The present day economic analysis had tried to look at poverty problem as an incidental occurrence and to some extent the destitution issue arising out of unusual circumstances like widowhood, losing their main earning worker in a family or some family level misfortune. Ramesh Shah in 1998 writes in this context that Gandhian economic system is understood on the basis of his specific programs he had suggested for removal of unemployment and poverty. His suggestions are then analyzed and declared irrelevant in the present day context. This is a wrong approach to take. Shah sees two reasons for it. One, the remedies Gandhi suggested for poverty, removal of unemployment in his time was born out of the ground realities in those times. Further, his solutions also were embedded deeply in his economic philosophy. The program came as part of the lifestyle that Gandhi had recommended. The second problem with respect to the application of Gandhian solution to the present day situation of poverty is that Gandhi's solution assumed some basic values in the society. If the building or reconstruction of society was not based on those values, how could one apply the solution and expect to yield results? Let us elaborate this point. Like Gandhi's, with regard to poverty, Gandhi wants to apply certain basic values in the society. By inculcating certain basic values, and if we reconstruct a society based on that values, we can expect certain results to address the poverty. So it is totally different from the other economic point of view. So we will elaborate this point. In Gandhi's economic system, emphasis is placed on home and cottage industries and decentralized production system. He recommends khadi based on hand spinning and hand weaving during the freedom struggle and argued that it would solve twin problems of unemployment and poverty. One shouldn't deduce on the basis of this recommendation that khadi and village industry are effective anti-poverty programs. This was attempted in the 5-year plans, as all of us we know, in the country to solve the rural unemployment, poverty from the second 5-year plan onwards. If such inference is made, then the next inference would be that if there were no poverty and unemployment in the society, khadi and village industry and decentralized production systems were not required. Gandhi would not have accepted this position, as Vinoba Bhave, a scholar and Gandhi's follower, explained later. Decentralized home-based and cottage industry was part of the total economic system and not a standalone solution. Had it been so, it would only mean decentralizing centralized industries. So Gandhi wants the decentralized production, strengthening of cottage industries, that even for any centralized industry should be decentralized. Based on the decentralization, they need to do any production activities. Breaking the large units into small tiny ones and spreading it in nook and corners of the country is not what decentralized industry means in Gandhi's sense. That is not the Gandhi's decentralization. There it is part or future of the society that has minimum urban settlements in which basic needs of all are met and there is no place for luxury. Basically he wants to inculcate the certain values among the masses in the country. People shouldn't be greedy. In short, any ethical man who is in an economic system, not the economic man. He himself is considered as part of the economic system, and of course women also. Here he is using the term man. Both, all genders, they should be ethical and they must use the available resources minimum for their own sustenance. Perhaps a more relevant question would be, should Gandhi's recommendation be applied in the situation where the overall philosophy is not accepted by the society? In this context, we should briefly review the debate on the economic development premises. We have reviewed it already in our previous lecture, and if you look at my lecture based on the unit 2, and if you read the unit 2, you can certainly understand. So if you need, we can revisit whenever there is necessary in order to understand why and how Gandhi understood poverty very differently. Dasgupta notes that the central concern of the Indian economic nationalism was to find a solution for mass poverty in the country. The causes for poverty were relatively well established and accepted by thinkers and politicians of the time. Nauroji and Dutt had carried out good empirical analysis and had shown the process of impoverishment of the Indian masses. However, there were different opinions when it came to suggesting remedies. In fact, Justice Ranade had different view on the process of impoverishment in the country. He was in agreement with the others that over-dependence of workers on agriculture was the result of fall in output and employment in indigenous craft industries. But Ranade thought that it was a global phenomena due to the advent of technology and machine-based industrialization that had created economies of scale and the factory-produced goods were competitive. He did accept that since the India was a colony and the economic policies were exploitative, deceleration of the indigenous industry was faster than what we are expected. Ranade suggested industrialization and urbanization. He also formulated his views similar to the ones developed in economic literature that came to be known as development economics. Ranade viewed that the Indian economy was in agrarian stage and the next stage should be industrialization. Dear learners, if you read the modernization theory, there is a stage for the development. So, Ranade viewed this Indian economy based on certain stages. According to him, he viewed currently the Indian economy is the agrarian stage, the next stage should be industrialization. This had happening all over Europe and other countries. So he studied the experiences of European countries and he compared the development of European country with India. So as far as he concerned, we are in the stage of in an agrarian economy. From this stage, next stage will be industrialization. So most economists in India agreed with his basic view that India should industrialize in order to eradicate poverty. They differed it why it was not happening or how it could happen. Gandhi did not agree with the goal of industrialization. He did not see industrialization as a solution for removal of poverty. He argued that economic development based on machinery would lead to further unemployment and impoverishment. He held firmly that machinery displaced labor. He was very apprehensive about industry-led economic development because he feared that it would lead to concentration of wealth and power in the hands of few. The elite would then start exploiting the rural poor masses in similar fashion as British did. Instead, he proposed the revival of indigenous and traditional village and craft industry. He saw in his enormous scope to provide productive employment to a very huge number of workers. He thought that such kind of productive employment would not only increase national output, it would also contribute directly towards the removal of poverty. It would also arrest urbanization and would almost eliminate scope for concentration of economic power. For Gandhi, a society with minimum inequity was a preferred goal. In this context, he had introduced the concept of Swadeshi. It would be working to eliminate capitalism. Resources would be owned by individual producers or by the community. The output would be shared rather than being paid as returns to the factors of production. We can see that Gandhi understood the poverty problem in a radically different way than the economists of his times. While Gandhi and almost economists had agreed on the process of impoverishment, they differed significantly in suggesting remedies. Interestingly, Gandhi listed 18 constructive programs and not one was specifically named as anti-poverty. It is hoped that our listeners, you are able to understand that for Gandhi, poverty was not a residual issue but a structural issue, and his remedy to it was also a structural. So he wants to address the issue by bringing certain changes in the structure of the society, and he wants to inculcate the certain values in the society by changing the nature of the society. By inculcating the values, the mode of production will change. Based on that, the poverty could be addressed. This was his thinking. I would like to sum up my last two lecture and this lecture in this manner. In these along with this lecture, these three lectures and this unit, we have tried to develop an understanding about the influence of colonialism on Gandhi's economic thought. Gandhi encountered colonialism in South Africa more in terms of human rights violation, as we all understood. Indians had entered South Africa as an indentured laborers, and when free, wanted to pursue livelihood activities honestly and pursued equality with the whites. Gandhi saw that the white who ruled the states in South Africa saw this as threat to their way of profiteering and exploitation and tried to stop Indians by assigning them second-grade citizens. In India, the colonialism had been working at two levels. At the economic level, their way of working was the same. Since the workers were not indentured labor, they had to deal with independent owners of production resources. The British started with trade and soon turned advantages of terms of trade in their favor. Industrialization came to their help. In agriculture, British became almost extortionist. The second way of working of colonialism was through the introduction of liberal education. An educated, this we elaborately dealt in our previous lecture. An educated class indeed grew and the Indian nationalism was born. But this group could not have its own vision for free India, be it moderates or extremists. Most thought that the British should leave India, but it would be run by the Indian elite on the same principles that governed England or other European countries. We have followed the discussion on colonialism with Gandhi's understanding of poverty. He could see the impoverishment of the Indian masses was definitely due to colonizing and pursuant economic policies and agreed with other scholars, nationalists and economists, but he strongly disagreed with the remedy. To him, eradication of poverty was not residual and independent issue and industrialization was not an answer. His vision of development of India was based on revitalizing indigenous craft and village industry and providing productive and dignified livelihood for all. So these are the so far we have learnt about the Gandhis encountered in South Africa, how Gandhi encountered colonialism in South Africa and India, and how Gandhi experienced poverty in India. So we have listened and learnt in detail in these 3 lectures. I have mentioned few readings. If any one of you interested to learn more about this topic, you can very well go through these suggested readings. Hope you enjoyed these 3 lectures to understand the Gandhi's thought about poverty and his experience in South Africa and India on colonialism. Thank you so much.